Hi everybody and welcome back to Music with Meg. I'm Meg and today we're going to be learning a little bit more about chords. Music with Meg. Now we've visited chords before on my YouTube channel, so if you would like a little refresher on the basics of chords, then click here to watch that video. It's super important to understand chords and how chords work, especially if you want to write, arrange, or improvise music. In this video, we're going to be looking at triads, which is the most common type of chord you might come across. Just like a tricycle has 3 wheels and a triangle has 3 sides, a triad is a chord made up of 3 notes, each a third apart. So, in any given musical key, we have a choice of 7 triads, and we can number these 1 to 7 using Roman numerals. Let's take C major, for instance. These notes would be C, D, E, F, G, A, B, or numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. These numbers also have names like tonic, subdominant, and dominant. If you would like to watch a video on that, you can click here for my video about scale degrees. So here we are. Let's create the triads for the scale degrees in C major in the treble clef. We can write them on the stave like this, and they sound like this on the piano. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. When the notes are stacked like this, 1, 3, 5, with the key note at the bottom of the triad, we call this root position. So for example, a D minor chord in root position would look like this, and it would sound like this. Now what we can do to make this D minor chord sound a little more interesting is we can jump that bottom D up an octave. So now the note at the bottom of our chord is F. Our 3 notes are F, A, and D. As you can see, it's still a D minor chord because none of the notes have changed, but the sound is going to change. This is our D minor chord in root position. And here's our D minor chord in first inversion. Now we can also take this chord and put it into second inversion. And can you guess how we do that? Well, we're going to take the bottom note from our first inversion, which is F, and we're also going to jump that one up an octave. So it's A on the bottom, then D, then F. And this is what we call second inversion. Second inversion sounds like this. So again, it's still a D minor chord, it just has a slightly different sound. Let's listen to those 3 chords again. Here's D minor in root position. Here it is in first inversion. And here it is in second inversion. Now there are a few ways that we can write chord inversions in our music theory. The most common way is to use those Roman numerals 1 to 7 and then to add a letter A, B or C to describe the inversion. So A would be root position, B would be first inversion and C would be second inversion. We're going to take a look at these chords as an example. Now it's important to make a note of the key signature. We are in G major, and our first chord here, A, C, and E, that is A minor. So the first thing we need to do is work out what scale degree A is in relation to G major. So if we write out all of the letter names in the G major scale, G, A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp, we can see that A is the second scale degree, or the supertonic, in our key. Now if we look at our chord again, we can see that A is the root note and it's at the bottom of our triad. So this chord is in the root position. which is letter A. So we could write this chord as 2A. The next triad we've got written here is F sharp, A, and D. We can see that this is not an F sharp chord because an F sharp major chord would be F sharp, A sharp, D, and an F sharp minor chord would be F sharp, A, C sharp. So this chord is a D major chord. However, the bottom note is F sharp, and F sharp would usually sit in the middle of a D major triad. So what we've done here is we've jumped that D up an octave and we have made this into a first inversion. We can also see that D is the dominant chord, chord number 5 in the G major scale. So we know that this chord is 5 dominant and B for first inversion. It's a 5B chord. Now, another less common way of writing chord inversions, but one that you'll need to know if you're taking grade 5 theory, is the figured bass method. Now, the way that this method is different is that it describes the intervals between the bottom note of the triad and the second note, and then the bottom note and the top note. So, for example, if we took a chord in the root position, the interval between the bottom note and the middle note is a third, and the interval between the bottom note and the top note is a fifth. So we would write this a little bit like a fraction, with the number 3 on top and the number 5 on the bottom. And this tells you that your chord is in the root position. First inversion, now we've changed that bottom note up an octave, our fraction is written like this. The interval between the bottom note and the middle note is a third, just like before, but the interval between the bottom note and the top note is now a sixth. So we write this interval as 3/6. And finally, second inversion. The interval between the bottom note and the middle note is now a fourth, so that's our number 4, and the interval between the bottom note and the top note is now a sixth. So that bottom number becomes 6. Using inversions can be really helpful to finish a piece of music. If you have the same chord repeating in music, try changing one of those chords to be an inversion. So for example, instead of having this, you might have this. Now, naming and playing chords in different inversions is really quite simple if you just give it a little bit of practice. When it comes to naming chords, it's very important to remember what key you're in, and if it's helpful, to write out the letter names in that key and the Roman numerals to help you to identify the chord. If you want some more practice identifying chords, then you can visit my Ko-fi page where you will find chord writing sheets and practice resources. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you have a lovely week, happy practicing, and I'll see you next time. Bye!